Actually, thinking about it right before the review, I realized that whatever RHA does is what everyone else is supposed to do in the first place as well. And yet, I would wish for so much more brands to make it so easy for me to recommend one of their products. I mean, I reviewed the MA650 wireless. Great value, great sound, great convenience. Like I said, easy to recommend. I also reviewed the MA750 wireless, and even though they are actually more expensive, they are actually easier to recommend because they push things even further and are just so much better. And now with the T20 or T20i, I mean, by now it's just a piece of cake. But let's see what's in the box here first before we're getting into the sound and everything else. We get this quite nice carrying case that we also get on the MA750, but not the wireless version because it wouldn't make so much sense. You can store the headphones themselves in, maybe the cables and the tips that we can already see here. And I've already talked about it in my MA750 wireless review. They have an impact on the fit, comfort and also sound. So just real quick. These don't fit well in my ear. It definitely could change on your side. These do, but they have a little bit of a push that I don't like so much. But what these have in common is a little bit of a thinner sound, maybe a little bit more neutral. These are a little bit richer, sound a little bit more full, I would say, but have the right compromise in terms of comfort and fit and sound for me. So that's that. We also get this cable clip in case you want to use that and the filter that we are going into a little bit later. But let's check the headphones themselves now, and starting with the cable here on this side with the quite nice connector with a stress relief, which is super nice. So it should hold up even longer, especially with this definitely noticeably thicker than normal cable. So that's good. We can also change when they actually separate into two pieces, which is quite handy. Here we have the remote. I already liked those on all the previous models as well, because on an iOS device you can definitely control everything. Volume and also playback. Even if you have an Android device, you maybe can't change the volume, but at least you can still use it for playback. So I think that's a no-brainer which one you should get. But the important part here are the hooks and the earphones themselves. Now, quality-wise, really nice stainless steel, really good done. But the hook is the important part, because what I actually didn't realize at first is how flexible it is. Because as you can see, you can push it into every single direction, it will stay like that. This is actually very important, so you really have to adjust it and mold it around your ear and push it. Because if you just put them in your ear and then just put them over it, you won't get the right fit. So you have to tangle a little bit around that to make it fit. Obviously here we have the logo for left and right with the T20i and the tips, but let's actually put them on, which is not quite as quickly done as maybe on the 750 or a 650, because like I said, you have to put them first in your ear and not just put them around your ear like all others, because what you should actually do is push them a little bit and then actually press so that this flexible part actually stays like that. And if you do that, then you have an amazing comfort, but also fit, and they don't move at all. They are locked and loaded. I mean, that they did so well. Like I said, it's not quite as convenient. It needs a little bit longer, maybe once you get used to it. But yeah, not the fastest and not the quickest way, because you really need to do this. Because what I did for the first few days, I just put them around my ear and I thought they sit a little bit loose because they jump out of my ear a little bit. And what I have to say still though, that this flexible part goes a little bit too long in my opinion, because if I do this, then as you can see, it kind of touches my ear on the outside. So maybe a little bit shorter, but due to the weight here, it stays like that. And this is the good part about making it a little bit into two pieces later on, because like now they sit really well, because you don't really have so much of an issue if they split away later. So I like that. And like I said, it needs a little bit time. But once you get that done, they sit very comfortable. Now, what they are not, I mean, is something that you can forget in your ear. I always felt them, not in an uncomfortable way, but you just notice that you have them there. Some other ones you can forget, here not so much, but they are way more secure in your ear. They are actually more comfortable, because I had this idea already on one of the Sures, but not quite as smooth, because those kind of were a little bit more sharp around the corner, so it kind of made me sore, which is here so much nicer. So maybe not the perfect fit for me, just because my left ear is odd. I don't have to get into that anymore. But even with my odd ear, with those really flexible, actually patented, I think, hooks, secure fit, comfortable fit, what else to say? And due to actually them staying in my ear, the isolation is also a little bit better than it was on the 750, where they kind of went out of my ear a little bit more. So that's that. But since they are wired, we have to talk about how easy they are to push, and actually moderately, because even with a normal, just decent headphone jack on a phone, you get enough volume. I mean, I even get enough volume, which means everyone else has enough reserves, which is good to see. What I've noticed though, if you use a headphone amp or even just something like this dongle, sound quality will improve. You will, at least with this dongle, lose the remote control usability and obviously the microphone that it has for calls, but it is worth it, maybe in some opinion, if you want a better sound, because bass just got a little bit tighter, more structured, and everything opened up, and everything just got a little bit better. Same as, for example, the glare, which was less obvious here, but more about that later. What we should talk about now when it comes to the sound are those filters, because that's the modular kind of unique thing about these. So what you have is, you have a treble one, you have one for reference and bass. So what they do is the treble one pushes, so as far as I know, the treble by plus 3 dB, and the bass one pushes bass by 3 dB. I have to actually say that the difference is way more subtle than I expected, because what the bass one does is, it actually seems to filter or smoothen up the highs a little bit more than I would like to, because then I didn't quite feel all the details so much anymore, but the bass got a little bit more push forward. But it's not like you will make these into bass cannons now. It's not the thing, which is good because we have already more than enough bass, but I'll get into that, not that it's overbearing or something like that. And the highs filter, I have to say the treble ones do a good job. They kind of open it a little bit more, even though I think that's not actually even noticeable. So I would say all of my talk about the sound is based on the standard ones, and what I would actually wish for, maybe for a next version, give me one that also pushes the mids, because that's something that I personally like so much. Now, starting off with the Soundstage, I have to say that it's actually quite nice and open, but also quite wide, but not getting too far, so you lose out on the imaging. So I really like that. And the signature, especially since people ask me, how did you compare with the 750? Now, I can only talk about the 750 wireless. So Bluetooth against wired isn't quite a perfect comparison, but it should be good enough, and I'll get into that also a little bit later. But what they do is offer amazing bass. Yes, it is pushed a little bit overall throughout, but especially on the sub bass segment, they have still a lot force, because they are very punchy, and especially if you have a little bit of a better amp, you also get this nice tight bass, but it's still full, but it doesn't ever get boomy or something like that. So very structured, very detailed, very powerful bass, and this is definitely good enough for even bass heavy music, because the quality, but not just the amount of the bass, make it so pleasurable, and it's a really well full weight sound. The 750, I have to say though, what they do is push the mid bass a little bit more. They don't have quite so much power on the sub bass anymore, but overall they sound a little bit warmer and a little bit richer, in case you like that. These sound, I would say, a little bit more neutral in that regard, and also in terms of the mids, because the mids are not quite as pushed forward like on the MA750 wireless, what I like so much. It's a little bit more neutral, so everything is more in one line. But the highs, then again, I have to say, that's why I don't think you need the treble filter, go quite high. And there is a little bit, one thing that I don't like so much, there is some glare, a little bit of a shrill note, but only is noticeable on certain music, so not so much. Because if you have higher quality music, you definitely notice all the details and everything else, and they go quite high. Usually not too harsh, they don't go too high, but they definitely don't soften it up as much as the 750 do. But if you have lower quality music that is a little bit rougher around the edges, that maybe doesn't have quite the balance, you will notice this more. So I think the MA750 are a little bit more for convenient listening. They don't really need so much attention from you, because here you after all get so much more details. And like I, for example, already did in my analogy with the 650 and the 750s, where the 650 was a great house with everything else already sounding well, and the 750s just pushed it. They opened all the doors, the basement and also the attic, and you just got way more of that. Now, what could I say here for the T20s? Well, they actually build parts around the house together, because the bass, more power at the sub bass segment, and a little bit more neutral in the mid bass. The mids are a little bit also more flat, not pushed so much in case you want that. And the highs offer also more resolution. So overall, it does everything better. But if you like that better, something else. Because like I said, you need a little bit more attention. They are not quite so much for easy listening, because they demand you to be active. If you are someone who likes that, who's an active listener, who wants to hear all the details and get the best out of it in all genres, because I didn't hear anything. If it was classic music or bass heavy music, if it was metal, if it was rock, they did deliver on everything. Like I said, lower quality music was a little bit harder to enjoy because you just got too much of this roughness. If you like that roughness, and I mean a lot of people actually just want to have the sound as it is, yes, it's nice. I think the 750 has a little bit of a more casual approach because the bass is a little bit warmer, and due to the highs rolling off, even though you get still enough of that, also quite high, they're a little bit easier to listen to. So just in terms of the signature itself, I still prefer the MA750, but I totally get what the T20 does better. High resolution, better structured sound, well defined, actually more balanced. They are really well, and in case you want some little bit of adjustments, you can get that, because this is just so much more of an adjustment that you might say, this is the little bit that I wanted, because what I expected it to completely change the sound signature, and then I thought, why make this? Because if you have a certain sound signature and you give me these filters and it changes everything, you're not quite true to yourself. But they do this so subtle and so well that you should find your right one. For me, it's the standard one. Even though I like highs, I mean, I already get more than enough, and especially on the music that I listen to, so kind of like more older metal and post-hardcore, metalcore, melodic death, and so, which is just not quite as smooth and refined like mainstream music. This one is already good enough. So, I mean, like I said, piece of cake. Recommendation, yes, absolutely. They cost around 150. They are easy to drive. They are even more so comfortable than the MA750 because they are easier adjustable and so on. But obviously, you need the wire. So for me, at the end, the convenience wins here because they are still comfortable, sound great, actually a little bit easier for me to enjoy. So what I would maybe ask RHA, in case they listen, please make a wireless neckband version of those. So instead of an MA750 wireless, make on T20 wireless, and then especially the convenience would be there because the cable is thick and everything. And especially at work, I don't really like the cable so much. So I'm okay with compromising on sound quality. That is obviously better here for convenience. But I mean, like I said, all three that I had so far are easy to recommend, and I think all the other ones that I will still get will be just as easy, but we will see. But more about that obviously in a later review. If you have still any questions, I hope I got it right. So M750 is a little bit fuller, mid bass a little bit more pushed, highs a little bit smoother. Overall, I think closer to what mainstream finds easier to listen to. These a little bit more demanding, but more high end. They definitely are better. It just depends on if that's also better for you, which is in some way, for some music, definitely the case for me. But as a better all-rounder, the MA750 is still my one to go for. But what these drivers do is so good. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Until next time, bye.